Hey everybody, Qroo here. Welcome to the channel. It's about 5:30 in the morning where I'm at. I'm enjoying my second cup of coffee. If I was still in my first cup, I don't think any words would be coming out. I'm always up early, working on some different videos for the channel. I think you're gonna really like them. But I decided to take a break and turn on the camera and answer a question that I saw from a viewer the other day about what I think is a really useful, command or expression, and that is asegúrate. Asegúrate. And it's when you're telling somebody, hey, make sure that something, make sure you get up early, make sure you lock the door, make sure the door is locked, make sure Billy gets dressed, make sure Billy makes it to school, that kind of make sure. I say make sure a lot in English, so I tend to like this expression, asegúrate. So we're going to be talking about that today. So some of you might be going, okay, Paul, you just said it's asegúrate. I can see it on the screen. What else do we need to talk about? Why is the video continuing? Well, the viewer had some questions because he was like, okay, sometimes I see this with just an infinitive, and sometimes I see it followed by a conjugated verb, but it's in the subjunctive. Sometimes it's in the indicative, and I'm confused by it. Can you show me how to use it correctly? That's why we have a video here, see? And you might have noticed I said the subjunctive. Yes, I'm a huge fan of the subjunctive. I think it is the keystone to mastering Spanish. If you don't learn it, you're never going to speak Spanish well. So we're going to be talking about it a little bit here today. If you have no idea what the subjunctive is, I have a series on it. Look for the subjunctive triggers playlist and it'll give you an idea. So let's get back on topic. We're talking about asegúrate. Asegúrate. And this is the imperative or command form. I'm telling someone, make sure that something occurs, okay? We're going to be looking at three types of constructions. I'm going to be showing you which one to use in which circumstance, all right? Back to our viewer, again, sometimes saw it with the infinitive. So we're going to have asegúrate de plus infinitive. And then we're going to have asegúrate de que plus subjunctive. And then we're going to have asegúrate de que plus indicative. The first one on the list I'm going to be using when I'm telling somebody to make sure of something and there's no subject change. And when I mean subject change, I'm saying make sure you lock the door, okay? Not make sure the door is locked. Because if you broke those up, there's a subject change. If I say the door is locked, what's the subject? The door, okay? So that's a subject change. No subject change, make sure you lock the door. In that circumstance, we're just going to be popping in infinitives. Asegúrate de cerrar la puerta con llave. That's lock the door. Now, sometimes in Spanish, people will just say, close the door. Asegúrate de cerrar la puerta, and they mean lock the door. You'll see that, okay? If you want to be specific, you can add con llave, which means with key, all right? But if somebody's like, asegúrate de cerrar la puerta, they might mean make sure you shut the door or make sure you lock the door. It's all about context. You can pop in any infinitive there. Asegúrate de sacar la basura. Make sure you take out the garbage. Asegúrate de lavar el carro. Make sure you wash the car. I'm giving a lot of commands today, I guess because it's a weekend and I have my own honey-do list that's, very similar to that, actually. Very similar. Let's take a look at our other two constructions. Asegúrate de que plus subjunctive and asegúrate de que plus indicative. Which one are we going to be using? And let me give you an example of both. Again, I'm talking about a subject change. So instead of saying, make sure you lock the door, I'll say, make sure the door is locked. So if I said that using the indicative, I would say, asegúrate de que la puerta está cerrada con llave. Está. That's the indicative, the plain old present tense. And if I did it in the subjunctive, it's very similar, except that verb, estar, right, is going to be in the subjunctive. The first part never changes. Asegúrate de que la puerta esté cerrada con llave. So we have está and esté. And I know that doesn't sound like a big deal because you're like, oh, it's just a letter change, Paul. And with that particular verb, yeah, it's not a big deal. But sometimes it's going to sound very different, depending on the verb you're using. So what's the big difference between the subjunctive and the indicative? If you're listening to native speakers or seeing this in writing, you're going to see both used. So that's the confusion with many students. Does this construction require the subjunctive or not? And the answer is, it depends what you want to say. There's a subtle distinction between the two. If I'm using the subjunctive, I'm trying to exert some type of influence over the person. I'm telling them, make sure the door is locked, right? Meaning that's your responsibility. If it's not locked, it needs to be locked, you lock it, okay? Now, if we use the indicative or the plain old present tense with this construction, all we're saying is that I want you to confirm the door is closed. I'm not asking you to close the door or take any other action. It's just like confirmar, to confirm that it's done. So there's a subtle distinction there in the Spanish, but when you think about it in English, you know, if I'm telling somebody to make sure something's done, I'm generally not asking them to confirm that it was done. I'm telling them, you know, get it done, right? For example, I'm like, hey, make sure Juan takes the garbage out before it rains, right? I'm not asking you to confirm that he took the garbage out before it rains. That doesn't make much sense. I'm telling you to make sure this all happens, right? So it's much more common to have the subjunctive used there. And if we were going to do that, you think you can do that one? You folks that are good at the subjunctive? Make sure Juan takes the garbage out before it rains. How are we going to start this thing out? With our imperative form right there up front, asegúrate, asegúrate. Pretty easy, right? Asegúrate de que Juan saque la basura. Did you get that? Saque la basura antes de que llueva. The subjunctive's there too. So we have two in there, but they have different triggers. Remember, learning Spanish is all about patterns. You learn those triggers. If you're watching my subjunctive trigger playlist, you're going to recognize that, okay? If you ask somebody who's really into the nuances of the language and ask them to explain it, that's how they're going to explain the difference between using the indicative and the subjunctive with those constructions. But there's a difference between, you know, that kind of academic analysis of a language and what people actually do in the street, right? So when you hear people use this, they may not be making that distinction. Some people just may be using the subjunctive. Some may use the indicative. It just sounds better to them. So what does this mean to you as a person who's learning Spanish? Like, what should you follow? Well, my recommendation is that if there's no subject change, you follow that first one. Asegúrate de plus infinitive. Asegúrate de sacar la basura. Make sure you take out the garbage. If there is a subject change, I recommend using the construction with the subjunctive, okay? Because that's usually what we're saying. You know, make sure this happens. Make sure you lock the door, not just confirm the door is locked. So that is always the safest bet. The asegúrate de que plus subjunctive. So that's not too tough, right? The hardest part about using the subjunctive is just learning when to use it, which I just showed you. The conjugations are not that difficult. I do have a video about that also, and I'll make sure that I put links to all of this in the description section of this video. Now, before I head out, I just want to point out one thing about that first construction, the asegúrate de plus infinitive. Sometimes people ask me, okay, what if I want to say make sure you don't do something? Like, where does that no go? It's going to go just before the infinitive. For example, make sure you don't leave your keys in the car. Asegúrate de no dejar las llaves en el carro. De no dejar las llaves en el carro. Just pop that no in there. Piece of cake, right? Well, that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, just do me a favor and give it a thumbs up. And asegúrate de seguir viendo mis videos. Hasta luego.